Hi, good morning. It's Gene from Maverstar Observatory. You know, guys, I have to say, we've got some great people supporting this observatory. Not just here and there with a bit of finance, but some people out there that are subscribed to us, share the videos. They help expand, the information that we get by doing that. We've got some great people that support the observatory by having their equipment in their homes around the world. They are what we call the superstars because they take their time out. I know it's only a small amount of time, but it's an effort that's required, to collect the data for us and then send it back over to the UK here at the observatory, where we process it and upload it up into the internet or our website, our dedicated website. And we've got our patrons who are there every month for us. So it's real delight and a pleasure to have those people on board. But I will say this: it's always the case, isn't it? It's like even I know some people aren't religious, and sometimes I get pulled up for talking about religion. But it does say in the Bible that there is a goldsmith that refines that gold into its purest form, and these people, the way I see them, are that refined gold. And there are some good people still out there. I know that. What frustrates me sometimes is when people come onto the website, and now we're getting about 15,000 of those every week, come onto the website and they, go through the information that we've put up there, our updates, and they don't even contribute a little bit towards it. And I know that there's been some people that have been probably following me now for 10 years that to date have still not, offered any support financially, or assistance in other ways. And it's a shame, because sometimes you feel like it's the same people that are doing the work or pulling the cart all the time. What we need to do, I think, as a community in whole, not just let's just face it, we get on average 1,000 views, and sometimes we go a little bit more than that. We get 5,000 views on each video that we do. And out of those, we'll probably get a couple of people that donate, one or two. It's always, you can count these people on your hands, literally. It would be great if a few more people would be a little bit more proactive in the support and help us out here. We could do a lot more with a lot more funding. I think you guys know that I'm very resourceful. With the funding I get, I stretch it as much as we can, and we've done really well the past 5 years. We've managed to build a Trimag system, program it. It took a long time, if you remember. It took me a couple of years to write that program, because I was learning C++ as well as trying to build the electronics. And that's simply because we couldn't afford hundreds of thousands of pounds in development costs, programmers, project managers and things like that. These are the things that government support, organisations like NASA, NOAA, the ESA, etc., etc. They get government funding, and they have bigger pots, and therefore they can delegate the work out. Here at the observatory, as you guys know, it's mainly me, and I'm the electronics engineer, I'm the program writer, I'm the project manager, I'm the the web master, deals with that. I'm also trying to put the word out on social media platform like YouTube. So we have to just make what we get go that little bit further, and that requires a little bit more of an effort here. Sometimes it is hard work, but it has paid off. We have had magnetometers in Kentucky, Southern California. We have one in Arizona, which I've got to have a word with Scott, see if he's got any data for us, because we haven't seen any data there for a while. We've got Kendall in Canada, who's got one of our muon detectors as well, monitoring the muon radiation in Canada, as well as taking readings on the magnetic intensity in that region, because it's very important. So we've got a good station there in Canada. We've got another good station down in Perth, Australia. Again, another one of our magnetometers is there with a muon detector. So we're taking information on the amount of radiation with regards to muons, and also the intensity down there, because we know it's one of the strongest fields, or one of the strongest intensities around our planet at the moment. We have struggled to get something in Russia, and I do believe one day we will get there. Maybe it would be worth approaching some universities in Russia and seeing whether they just want to help collect some of the data, get their students involved in that. That might be the way to go forward with that. I think if we could secure one in Russia, I think we've got, then, the Northern Hemisphere now really well down, because we know the magnetic North Pole is tracking towards central Russia. We have an inkling that the climate is shifting along with the magnetic pole. The last thing we would want to see is one of the other anomalies, and I don't believe that just by coincidence the three anomalies, the main ones over the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, are there by coincidence. I think there is synchronicity there, and we're talking about magnetic poles, Arctic climate, and of course rotational axis. Now, we know that the rotational axis hasn't shifted in at least 4,000, 5,000, maybe 8,000 years. And that's because of some of the monuments that were structured, like Stonehenge, the pyramids in Giza, Egypt, were all aligned with magnetic North Pole, and no coincidence that that was the case, because they was using them for working out what seasons and how close they were coming to the winter and how close they were coming to the summer. And there was great it was a great calendar or mechanism for understanding where there was, and it was of course all built around agriculture as well. But we know, because they're still aligned perfectly with magnetic North Pole, that rotational axis, that they have not shifted off that platform. How do I know that they're aligned by the rotational axis? Well, they are set up to observe the winter and summer solstices. And of course, if the axis have shifted over that period of time of about 6,000 years, they wouldn't align up on those solstices as accurately as they do today. So we know at this point, for the last 5,000-6,000 years, there's been no rotational axis shift on our planet, and Polaris is still the North Star. And that's another way of finding out where North is, and also whether the rotational axis has shifted, because it wouldn't be in the position where it is in the night sky if that's the case. So navigation, if we was using sextants like they used to, the old sailors, then obviously things would be off and them ships wouldn't be turning up in ports. But thankfully we have GPS now. But that doesn't mean GPS can't be affected by solar storms, because at the end of the day GPS is relied on satellite and time it takes to ping signals backwards and forwards from a specific location. And so we get GPS accuracy. That's how we get now also accuracy in time. I was just reading through the comments yesterday, and it's just again reassurance that we've got some real great people on board with what we do. And I really think that it's important at this time that we're at, that we appreciate that there is a very small amount of people that seem to have woke up to the BS that is out there, and out there in a lot of different manners. And I do have hope. That's the main thing. I do have hope, because I know at some point in the future it's going to get like what it did with what happened to Gaddafi, with the rest of the world's governments, because I think they're just taking the piss now completely. They're just inventing things to stealth tax us, and they're getting away with it like blue murder. But the thing is they're getting greedier and greedier. I don't think we mind, and we completely accept that there is a certain level of corruption that we'll probably put up with, but we are getting to the point now where we're starting to get sick and tired of it. I mean, for prime ministers now to be pulled up so clear and out in the daylight about making manifestos that they're not going to keep, like we're going to raise national insurance now here in the UK by a further £1.25. Instead of getting us a raise, we're having more further cuts in our salaries at a time where food prices are going up double every 12 months, and wages haven't increased to the standard, to the cost of living increases. So we're getting poorer and poorer, whilst these pigs are getting richer and richer. And I do believe that there will come a time, and I know how we all feel about this. Trust me, I'm in the same boat with you guys on this. I'm sick and tired of the corruption. I'm sick and tired of them waxing themselves rich, and I'm sick of them rubbing us in the mud constantly, daily. When we clearly know what they're doing is just simply stealing the taxpayers' money. And it should come as no surprise, because I've known this for years and years. If you're a criminal, what bigger bank could you rob than the taxpayer's purse? You know, all those revenues that come in. You just need to have a justification to do it, and, you know, a couple of friends in the right place, and you can easily backwash taxpayers' money that has been set up or given for good causes. But, you know, as we've seen during the pandemic over the last 18 months, how many companies went bankrupt after receiving government funding? And why was they not asked to repay that money back? You know, this is obviously ending up back in the politicians' pockets in some way or form, under the cloak of darkness. Let's just say that. But I think we all are getting fed up, and I think what happened to Gaddafi is, you know, the pinnacle point of where people say enough's enough, and they tore him apart, as we know, in the streets, because there is a limit to how much we will take before we act. And, you know, sometimes it takes a lot to get to that limit. I mean, if we look back at what happened in the Second World War, what the Jews allowed to happen to themselves, instead of, you know, immediately realising how much danger there was in, you know, they were very complacent, just hoping that it would not be the case, of their worst fears and nightmares would not come true. And unfortunately they did, didn't they? So we have a strong resilience to corruption and terrible behaviour. You know, we can find ourselves even today being pushed into a position where, you know, our lives are at risk, our family lives are at risk. But, you know, for some of us, you know, that corner goes back a lot further before, you know, you realise you can't go back any further, and you come out fighting from that point on. That's where we need to get to stop this. There is a lot of social media groups talking about these things now, talking about the corruptions of governments, not just here in the UK. This is a global pandemic of corruption taking place right now, and it stems from lobbyists to ministers and senators and you name it. It has to stop. You know, the reason why we all put into the kitty as taxpayers is so that we all benefit back from it. Like, it's nice to have, you know, good roads to drive your cars down. I know that here in the UK, some of the roads, and even by the RAC standards, they said it's like driving on the moon. So there's a lot of infrastructure damage that needs to be replaced. But you know what? If they keep donating, let's say there's allocated £1 billion to be spent on the, you know, the repair of the roads and other infrastructure, by the time it gets down to being spent actually on the allocated project, it's half of that, because everyone's took their little bit out of it. It reminds me of a story of 3 people living on the streets, and they said if only we had, you know, a little bit of ingredients, we could probably get a good meal out of this stew pot. And one of them turns up and says, well, I've got some meat I could put in there. The other one says, well, I've got some stock and some vegetables which I could put in there. And the other one says, you know, I could add my little bit. But what happens is, when it comes down to the individual putting something in this water, in this cooking pot that's boiling, he thinks to himself, I'm going to keep it for myself, and at least there's going to be some vegetables I'm going to be able to enjoy in there. And the other one thinks the same, at least there's going to be some stock in there, you know, I can enjoy. But they all keep back what they was going to put in the pot, and by the time it comes to serving it, they're just drinking hot water. So I do understand, you know, that it's important for us all to contribute to these projects, and we all can benefit from them. But you know, we've all got to contribute to them, and when that contribution gets put in, you know, we shouldn't have a third party that decides to rob all 3 of those ingredients for himself and still serve up the hot water and tell us that, you know, at least you've got hot water. It's the sort of world we're living in right now. As well as on top of everything else, you know, we're facing a world that is going through some dramatic climate changes. You know, we're in a world where for the first time in probably 780,000 years, it's going to go through a completed magnetic reversal. Someone did say to me the other day, how do we know it's a magnetic reversal and not an excursion? Well, my odds would be we're well overdue. We're over 500,000 years overdue a full reversal. And if we keep getting excursions, we need to ask ourselves the question, is what has changed within the core of our Earth that has created this situation where we don't get reversals, we just get excursions, where the pole reverses temporarily for a bit and then goes back to its original polarity. I mean, that could indicate that possibly we are entering a phase similar to what happened to Mars. It could be like a slowed downturn of the mechanism within the core of the Earth. I know it's described as the magneto swirling molten iron currents that set up the magnetic poles. It's a theory, and it's never been able to be recreated by a simulator in a laboratory. I'm not talking about computer simulation. I'm talking about a factual simulation. They've actually tried to rotate molten sodium because it melts at low temperature and generate a magnetic field, and it didn't achieve that. The only thing that they've got that they get an inkling on, and the problem is with this computer modelling systems, is you don't know simply what is causing the magnetic core to set up a magneto, which creates a magnetic field like a magnetosphere. When you're putting errors into a model, you're going to certainly get errors back out. And if you don't know what's causing the effects, then when you're building these magnetic models, the only thing you're going to get is errors out. It's not going to represent what is going on in the core of the planet because you have not got the facts there to start with. So what we're trying to do, I suppose, as scientists, is work back from the problem. So from the magnetosphere to the magnetic poles, and then what could possibly cause that behaviour in the core, if it is in fact coming from the core. We just don't know, because it's all theory at the end of the day. But we do know, just bear with me, get rid of that, we'll just leave that ringing, interruption. We do know that the magnetic poles are migrating. I'm going to end this for now and come back at them. Oh, okay, it's gone, doesn't need to. So yeah, we know that the magnetic poles are migrating on this planet. We know that it's altered the climate with regards to the level of radiation that is now coming in through the atmosphere. And we're not by any means at equilibrium, so we know that things are going to get a lot worse from this point on out. And it couldn't be at a worse time, could it? Because the world's not in a good place right now as it is. And maybe this is the universe, or the universe's way of trying to set the record straight. We don't know that. Or God's way of trying to set the record straight. Maybe that's why we're going through these changes. Because the reason why I say that is we forget sometimes as a human species that we're part of nature. And if we look at nature as a whole, one block, it makes up 100%, every bit of nature does. And we only make up probably 1% of that part of the block. If something changes with just 1% of that block, it's going to have an effect on the rest of the block. And therefore, we at that point can understand that, even though we're a small part of the block, that we still have an influence on the rest of nature. Because we're not something separate from it. We are part of nature. And therefore, if something in our little part of that section changes, we also have an effect on the larger block. And I believe that is the case. I believe that's exactly what's happening. I think these things come about at the right times. There's something very wrong with our world which we live in right now. I think you'll agree with me. The monetary system has expired itself, gone way past its sell-by date. It is not in line with technology. We've gone so far down the road of technology now that it has made a surplus of the workforce. People that can't get jobs. And if they can get jobs, they're very low paid jobs. And the reason why they're low paid jobs is because there's a surplus of people that can do that work. So, it's supply and demand. If there's not so many people that can supply the role of that job, then it usually pays more money. But if there's a surplus amount of people, it generally means that you can pay less, because there is always going to be someone that's going to take less just to get that little bit. But the point is that you have to have money to participate in this system, and this system is against itself. It's attacking itself because the technology is increasing. which means it makes less and less jobs. On top of that, there is no control and regulation over global population. And I know some people don't like the idea of even doing that. But, you know, you have to ask the question, you know, can we keep spreading like mould over a piece of bread till we consume it all? Because if that's the case, it means that, you know, the majority of people on this planet will have less and less and less. And there will always be those greedy people at the top that are not affected, because that is just a mathematical formula, believe it or not. There is a formula that predicts that it has to be that way. There has to be just a few people at the top, whilst underneath those few people is the majority. And I don't make that up. There is a mathematical formula that predicts that that is the way this system works. So it's very frightening. You know, it means that, you know, in order for change to come about, you know, some dramatic things have got to happen globally. And we are so far away from seeing that. If you're here today, you probably will never see that, unfortunately. I'm not being pessimistic, I'm being optimistic. I just know that great changes takes, you know, either disasters or, you know, when we have to be put human beings on the pinnacle of extinction. Those are the things that bring about great changes. You know, it's at that point where we're on the pinnacle of wiping ourselves out that we make those changes. It's like the heroin addict, when he has been told you will have only a week left if you do not quit that habit that you've got. It's only at the pinnacle point which changes are actually made. I want to thank you for your comments yesterday in the section. If you've got some comments you want to add today, you know, I do read them all. In the morning I have coffee and I go on to that previous video that I put up there and I read them. I go through them all, and sometimes I do answer a few of them. And don't feel I'm treating you any less if I don't. It's just, you know, it's a matter of what time I have, you know, to give. I'm trying my best there as well, you know, guys, to financially support this observatory. I went on a examination and a practical test last week. I passed the exam. I failed the practical. I've got to go again this week, next week. Sorry. Hopefully, I'll get that nailed out. I've paid for a little bit of extra training on that practical, just so I get a bit more familiar with it. Hopefully, we can then, you know, get some employment in that field, and then, you know, we can take some of the pressure off of raising the cash for the observatory. I don't mind, you know, pushing the wagon almost on my own if I have to, but it is good when a few other people realise that one person shouldn't be doing all the work, and, you know, they lend a little bit of support and help as well. And on that note, I'll just mention there's a link down there if you want to help support us. You guys know what we do, you know what we represent, and, you know, I really appreciate, you know, a little bit of help from you guys. So, you know, we have 1,000 people that come here, and just a couple of people support. It would be amazing if more people out of that 1,000 was actually some more people that supported, make life easier here at the observatory and for others. So on that note, link down in the description, and as always, take care of your loved ones, and bye for now.